Eugenie Sage.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Pleased to take a short call on the Riccarton Racecourse Bill and the Riccarton Racecourse Development Enabling Bill. These bills have proceeded through the Parliament relatively quickly. They were introduced in October last year. They only attracted a few submissions to Select Committee, and we are pleased that the bill is going through its final reading today. But, Mr Speaker, we have a little concern about the Minister's comments that this is really part of the government strategy to help with the Christchurch rebuild and to help provide affordable housing, because the 180-odd affordable homes which are to be provided as part of the quid pro quo for a quarter of the racecourse having its reserve status uplifted, and the trust board for the racecourse being able to sell that land and develop it, or have it developed with Ngāi Tahu properties, is the provision of these affordable homes. But, Mr Speaker, that is not going to tackle the crisis. It's not nearly enough, because we have hundreds of people tonight sleeping in their cars in Mangere because so many ordinary Kiwis recognise that we have a homelessness crisis, we have a housing crisis, and this government isn't doing enough to address that. And we've seen that over and over again in the House when questions have been asked of ministers, and we haven't seen them acknowledge that there is a crisis. Instead, they talk about there being a supply challenge. The first step towards solving a problem is recognising that it exists, and the government has actually failed to do that in terms of the housing crisis. Instead, we've seen denial, excuses, distractions, and now talk that this bill is a contribution to dealing with that crisis. Because these homes that will be built in Champions Mile won't, even though some of them will be affordable homes, i.e. they've got a sale price of less than $450,000, they're not going to be affordable to the people in Christchurch who are sleeping on the streets, in their cars, in garages, or dossed down on the floor of a family member or a friend. The houses, we need more emergency accommodation for people like that who are struggling to even provide themselves with food, with basic accommodation. And this bill is not a solution, well, these bills aren't a solution to that. The Green Party says we need the government to invest much more in building emergency accommodation, in building more state homes, instead of having the government sell off state houses and allow waiting lists for them to get longer and longer. And I want to live in a country where the government cares that people are sleeping rough, they're sleeping on the streets, and doesn't just stand by and watch and deny that there is a problem. I guess one of the other things that the Minister had said in the second reading was that this is these bills are unlocking land that is not being well used at the moment. And that is a concern, because if that is going to be part of the government strategy of providing more homes through the National Policy Statement on Urban Development, which was released recently. Now, that policy statement has some objectives of enabling people to provide for their social, economic and cultural well-being. It fails to mention environmental well-being. And we heard from the few submitters on this bill that they really valued the open space which the racecourse provides as a place to recreate, as a place to practice their golf skills, as a place to walk the dog. So we cannot see the housing crisis tackled simply by using reserve land in centres around New Zealand to increase subdivision and residential development. We want healthy cities. Those are cities which have got adequate green spaces in them. So it's very disappointing that in this new NPS for urban development, there is a reference only to social, economic and cultural wellbeing and not to environmental wellbeing, because we won't have healthy cities and we won't have a healthy economy unless we sustain the environment, which is the basis of that. Nevertheless, because this bill does provide for an extra 180 affordable homes, quote unquote, and because the land is actually situated in what is now part of the centre of Christchurch, it's not on the outskirts as it once was. It is close to schools, shopping facilities, the industrial area further to the south in Riccarton. It is a good place for development to occur because it is not promoting urban sprawl. But we think, Mr Speaker, that the Riccarton Racecourse Trust Board will get a substantial financial benefit from these bills. It is well aware of the amenity values of the racecourse. It has said that the revenue that the bills will allow it to generate will be used to promote racing, to enhance the amenity of the racecourse. That is all well and good. It also needs to be cognisant when it's working with Ngāi Tahu to actually ensure that we don't get some of the rabbit hutch developments that we've seen elsewhere in Christchurch, where houses are placed cheap by jowl with no consideration of passive solar, no limited consideration of energy efficiency, little consideration of how the homes interact with public transport links. And one of the problems here is that while there are criteria in the bill which the subdivision has to meet, they are quite limited. And that's a problem because the district plan in Christchurch is currently being reviewed. The final form of that is not yet known. And it's that plan which will determine what conditions the Christchurch City Council can put on the development to ensure that the subdivision does provide for good interaction and links with public transport infrastructure, good walking and cycling links, good protection of reserve areas and open space and smaller places for children to play and people to walk. So there's still quite a lot of uncertainty about the actual form that this development will take, and quite a lot of responsibility on Christchurch City Council to actually get that right. So, Mr Speaker, we're pleased that the bills are going through, but we have some qualifiers in the type of urban development that this government looks to be promoting if it's keen on using reserve land in other areas for subdivision, and given that its national policy statement doesn't recognise the importance of environmental wellbeing.